Reading from Handel's Messiah, the Family Advent Reader by Donna Payne and Fran Lenzo. And this reading is the fourth week in Advent, and it's Sunday, so it's the first day. It's called Castle or Cave. He was despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. He gave his back to the smiters and his cheeks to them that plucked off the hair. He hid not his face from shame and spitting. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. Based on Isaiah chapter 53, verse 3, Isaiah chapter 50, verse 6, and Isaiah chapter 53, verses 4 through 5. Carlo was a Spanish prince who became ruler of Naples, Italy in 1734. He grew fascinated with the nativity scenes that the Italians called presepi. King Carlo hired the best artists and fashion and scene designers to help him build huge displays around the figures of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus in the stable. In King Carlo's castle at Christmas, everyone's attention was on the Precipo. In fact, Carlo had started a fad. The homes of the nobility also showcased magnificent Precipi. The lords and ladies tried to outdo each other. With the start of the Christmas season, the contest was on. Who would have the most beautiful, the biggest, the most expensive, the most elaborate Precipo? Each noble family held an open house at Christmas to show off its Precipo. The manger scenes might contain 1,000 shepherds plus wise men, animals, and all sorts of miniature figures. There were lords and ladies dressed like Italian nobility. There might be fishermen fishing, children chasing a dog, or men eating spaghetti. The details were exact down to the wrinkles on the faces and the tiny loaves of bread, sausages, or fruits stacked on miniature store shelves. The scenery would include whole villages, streams with real water, fountains, mountains, castles, and ruins. There might even be a small volcano erupting, a replica of Naples' nearby Mount Vesuvius. Many of the figures had china heads, wooden arms and legs, and cloth bodies. Inside the tiny dolls were iron wires so that their bodies could be moved and placed in different positions. Queen Maria and her ladies in waiting sewed some of the costumes themselves. Their dresses were made from the finest fabrics and lace and were trimmed with real jewels, gold and silver. It is said that one of the wise men wore a perfect little copy of King Carlo's own royal cape. The splendor of the Italian Precipi honored Jesus, the King of Kings. But they were not at all like the place where he was born. The grandness and the beauty of King Carlos' nativity scenes had nothing in common with the poverty and simplicity of the stable in Bethlehem. There is no way of knowing what the stable really looked like. It might have been a one-room stone or mud-walled hut behind the inn. It could have been a temporary indoor animal shelter set up for those who had come to Bethlehem to register for the census. Most likely, Jesus was born in someone's cave stable. There are many caves in the hills around Bethlehem, and the very earliest references to his birthplace, call it a cave. The place where Jesus was born was the sort of place where a homeless person, an outcast, or a stranger might rest for the night. Jesus was all of those, both at his birth and at his death many years later. He was despised and rejected by many of those he came to save. What then could the Italians have been thinking when they designed their gorgeous precipice? Why have many other artists painted or displayed Jesus in magnificence and beauty at his birth? They knew, of course, that it was not the stable that was glorious, but the baby who was born there. The magnificence of the Italian precipice and the stink of the hay in the real stable are both part of the nativity scene. Both tell the truth about what happened there in Bethlehem. It is the truth that a Bethlehem feed box held the greatest treasure the world has ever known. The God of the universe was born, a human baby, in a lowly stable. In The Everlasting Man, author G.K. Chesterton suggested the wonder of this truth with these words: "The hands that made the sun and stars were too small to reach the huge heads of the cattle." So, said Chesterton, Bethlehem is emphatically a place where extremes meet. Not only did extremes meet at Bethlehem, but they meet at Calvary on the day Jesus died. Here is what happened to the one who could have called 10,000 angels to his side. He was despised. He was beaten. He was spit on. He was crucified. But that day also a treasure was secured for us. Our Lord and King experienced our grief. He carried our sorrows. He was wounded for our sin. The punishment that brought us peace was put upon him. Jesus was born in a shelter for animals. He was hated by many during his lifetime. He died a criminal's death. Jesus lived from cave to cross for us.